All right, so welcome today. How we doing on this Wednesday? Doing okay. I see some thumbs up there. Hopefully at home we're doing okay as well. It is some really good weather, is it not? All right. We're feeling the itch to kind of get out and do things. I think that's kind of like, normal for us, being kind of cooped up, and then also we want to get outside and enjoy it, just going for a walk or whatever it might be. All right. Well, today we will continue looking at Joseph Stalin, the man of steel. There, there's our agenda, and I look at that political propaganda poster there. You got Stalin there with the icons of the communist world. You've got you got Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, you have Lenin, and you have Stalin. You have Stalin. I look at that propaganda poster, and kind of brings me back to a time where it was a Movember, where we didn't. Mr. Schwartz had got us not to shave, and then Mr. Schwartz had this idea of, what if on the last day we shaved off our beards but left the mustache there? And I'm like, that is going to be a bad idea. And then, of course, someone said, well, Mr. Newcomb, what would happen if you put on this communist hat, all right, and took your glasses off? And I did that, and I looked like Joe Stalin, which then a guy across the hall, like teaches here, he's like, well, let's pose for a picture. And it's like, holy cow, Park High has Lenin and Stalin in the, so, and I'm sure maybe some of my students felt like, yeah, you kind of rule the class like Joe Stalin. No. And if you don't believe me, there might be a photo out there on Twitter of me as Joe Stalin. I will not be able to run for a political office, obviously. None of that. So, because there's photos of me with that. So there you go. If you're wondering, and be curious. All right. So just to get back here. Wow. Glad we could make it. Thank you. So deadline for any missing work is Friday. If we're going to struggle to meet that deadline, please reach out. Plenty of opportunity. We got spring break, all that stuff. So we got options here. Options. All right. So when you think there isn't, there are always options. I always say, this is the United States. We got options. All right. And this Friday, we will have an assessment related to the authoritarian states. And if I switch here, it's already in Schoology, and it's set up like you did with the cause and effects of 20th century wars. Because we are looking at two authoritarians right now, we had looked at Hitler and Stalin. You can anticipate you're going to probably, in that short answer, probably have to do a little comparison piece. So please take a look at that review sheet that's there. Okay. And again, if you're working with historical buddies on that stuff, maybe divvy up roles and responsibilities. But you have the pool again of 3 topics that will form into 3 prompts. And you just pick one of them, and then 3 topics here, and another pool, and that turns into 3 prompts, and you pick one of them. So very similar with that. Okay. So if you have questions or concerns related to that, please let me know. Okay. And if you have any questions at home, please put it in the chat so I can see it. All right. That'd be fantastic. Okay. And then today I really want to focus on Stalin. I'm highlighting a little bit of opposition first, and then give you some time to work on that graphic organizer. And normally I like to think that I've covered everything, and I know about some of the individuals that I bring up. And yesterday, on a cult of personality activity, that if I get that document that was out there that was published in 1963. It was part of the de-Stalinization, the cultural movement, and it was one in which did not show the artists under Stalin in a good light. And so here is the poet. And so I just felt like I had to do a little quick research and find some stuff about this poet. And if my mother-in-law was here, she's pretty good with the Slavic language, and it just rolls off her tongue like it's incredible. But here, the Russian poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko. There we go. I had to say that a little bit slower. I bet you if I practiced it, I could say it a little bit faster. He was part of a small dissident poets and writers. So the dissident is someone who dissents. And in the Soviet Union, even under Stalin, but then under just about any of them, you're going to have dissident groups. And his protest poems challenged the Soviet leaders and bureaucrats, Soviet policies, and social issues. He really took on anti-Semitism that existed in the Soviet Union as well. He had a little bit more freedom to move throughout the Soviet Union and travel abroad. So yesterday in class, we were talking a little bit about this, and I had made the statement that many of these individuals aren't going to be able to exit, to leave their country. All right. So we get a sense of here today, 2021. Realistically, can we go to Canada? Can we go to Canada? Can we? No, you can't, unless you're an essential worker. All right. There are many places you can't go to, and that's the restrictions because of the pandemic, and that's bugging some people. But if you were someone in an Eastern Bloc country, you couldn't have free movement. And that was always something that we'd always challenged the Eastern Bloc, saying you got to let people have free movement and all that stuff. Well, here's an example of a Russian poet who could, which then brought some criticism by other Soviet dissidents saying that maybe he's a poser. Maybe he's not for real. That maybe he's working with the government, all that stuff. So, and some are saying he did not join the high-ranking dissidents like Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Andrei Sakharov. That he only did enough where it wasn't going to put him in exile or face imprisonment and stuff like that. So still though, he defended his position. He says, no, what, I'm real, just like you guys with the dissident. I had family members die in the purge under Stalin, lost university positions, denounced the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia and Afghanistan. So he did enough. And then when, the Soviet Union in its final days and then post-Soviet Union, he did live between the United States and Russia. And, 2017, so not too long ago, he had passed away. So there we go. I just felt like I had to do that. Sorry. Had to bring that piece in there. All right. Also to go along with protests and opposition on the radio today, there is a song that's being used by many of the pro-democracy movements that have been used for many years. And it comes from the musical Les Miserables called Do You Hear the People Sing? All right, and that's making reference to the 1832 Paris uprising. And so that was just a little fun fact. Of course, I had to tell Madame Pauline that. So there you go. A song from a musical written by Victor Hugo. So I had to go tell Madame Pauline, the French teacher, that song still has relevancy today and being used. So there we go. Opposition. But to go along with this as well, I do have a video clip that I want to show about opposition. You know, Joseph Stalin is going to rule Russia, or excuse me, the Soviet Union for about 30 years. It's a long time, for about 30 years. And we know that he's committed a lot of atrocities through purges, expulsions, forced displacement, imprisonment in labor camps, manifested famines in the Soviet Union, mass murder, all that. We're looking at probably between 20 to 30 million people. So again, we can think of how brutal Adolf Hitler was. Joseph Stalin kicks it up some notches. All right, so we got a little video clip here that we're going to watch that deals with opposition and how he went about dealing with his opponents now that he is in power. Okay, viewer discretion is necessary, though, whenever we deal with some of these individuals. So you go, just down, back here. That's what I got. Sit back here. Not that I want to be him. Let me mute my mic.
The price was not mentioned when Stalin listed socialism's achievements in 1937.
На наших фабриках и заводах работает весь капиталист. Работает труженик фабрики и заводов. Руководят фабриками и заводами люди из народа. Это и называется у нас социализмом на деле. На наших полях работают труженики земли. Есть помещики, есть кулаков. Руководят этими работами люди из народа. Это и называется у нас социализмом в быту.
It was said Stalin's ovations were so long because nobody dared to be seen as the first to stop clapping. For Stalin was not just using harsh methods to push through changes he thought were essential. He was obsessed with destroying all potential opponents. The leader of the first workers' state lived in reclusive comfort. He felt insecure even about those closest to him. One by one, the most senior communists who had planned the political and social transformation of the country became his victims. Nikolai Bukharin had helped Stalin to power, but then dared to criticize him. At first, Bukharin was isolated in his Kremlin flat with his young wife. He remained a loyal communist even when the moment of arrest came.
О, это было страшно, трагично.
It was terrifying, tragic. He literally fell down on his knees before me and asked forgiveness for ruining my life.
Сказал, что никогда, если бы он только мог себе представить, что так кончается его жизнь, он бы убежал меня за
He said that if he could ever have imagined that his life would end this way, he would have run as far as possible away from me. No matter how strong his love, he would have suppressed it. He asked me never to forget his letter, which is now called his testament, and without fail to bring up his son a Bolshevik. That's the kind of faith he had, a Bolshevik to the end.
Вот какая была вера. Обязательно большевиком.
Суд идет, прошу встать. Садитесь, пожалуйста.
Bukharin's fate was sealed at one of a series of show trials specially designed as propaganda events to create fear and instill obedience.
Верховного суда Союза.
The trials were a concoction of fake evidence and false accusations. Confessions were forced through torture and threats to the victims' families.
Исключительное явление и чрезвычайное.
Officials and journalists in the courtroom played their part in the same drama.
Раньше всего
Boris Yefimov, who attended Bukharin's trial as a newspaper cartoonist, says he believed the confession he heard was genuine.
Как я мог сомневаться, если я своими ушами слышал, как...
How could I doubt it if with my own ears I heard Bukharin describe himself as an enemy? How he had planned to overthrow Soviet power, to hand over the Ukraine to the Germans. How he told of his betrayal.
Свергнуть советскую власть, отдать Украину немцам, Приморье японцам, рассказывал про свою...
What would you have said in my place if you'd heard a man confess his crimes with your own ears?
Если вы своими ушами слышали, как человек признается в своих...
It was a kind of hypnosis.
Это был какой-то, так сказать, гипноз.
вся наша страна от малого до старого ждет и требует одного – изменников и шпионов, продавших врагу нашу родину, расстрелять как поганых псов.
In his cartoons for Pravda, Yefimov obediently took up the prosecutor's description of the accused as vile dogs.
Это была у него какая-то фраза о том, что вот Троцкий и Бухарин это вот...
He'd used this phrase that Trotsky and Bukharin were one creature, a two-headed creature, the mad dog of fascism.
Две головы, но они, в общем, это одно и то же. Это...
It's an example of satire serving propaganda.
Фашизма. Вот это пример...
Every simple, I won't say fool, but every simple person could understand it.
Я не скажу дураку, но каждому простому человеку это понятно.
Yefimov applauded when the death penalty was pronounced.
И когда зачитали...
When they read out his death sentence, something snapped inside me. I felt that I'd changed, that the lights over our wonderful Soviet Union were extinguished.
Я чувствовала, что такое, я изменилась, померк и весь наш прекрасный Советский Союз.
Stalin's morbid paranoia grew. Nobody at any level of life in the country, regardless of whether they were in the party or not, was safe. From his desk, the Great Terror was controlled and conducted. Secret police orders gave every region an arbitrary quota for the purges. Category 1 meant death. Category 2 meant the prison camps. But at times Stalin grew impatient. When he scribbled, "Give a supplementary quota of 6,000 people in the first category to Krasnodar," he was signing the death warrant for an extra 6,000 on top of the previous target. The purges struck many of the earliest enthusiasts for communism. Mikhail Minlin, too, was arrested and interrogated by the secret police in Moscow.
И начался конвейер, начали, чтобы я подписал.
When the interrogation began, I was asked to sign lies about myself and good comrades from my region. They handed me a list of 47 people.
Очень много хороших, 47 человек мне список предъявили. Они добивались, чтобы я подписал это в
They wanted to get me to sign a statement.
не подписывал,
I
они
wouldn't.
меня держали 5
They kept me standing for 5 days, day and
И
night.
день, и ночь.
My legs were so
Я
swollen.
стоял, у меня ноги распухли.
At the height of the purges, ordinary people were required to take part in mass demonstrations against enemies of the people. Yet some, who'd been most devoted to Stalin, were still blind to what was going on. Ela Shistya the young electrical engineer couldn't believe what her husband, a party official, told her.
Он понимал, он знал то, чего я
He
не
understood.
знала.
He knew what I didn't
И
know.
когда он мне говорил как-то за столом, он мне сказал,
When he said, "You can't imagine it, Stalin is shooting all the present members of the Politburo," and he counted them off one by one.
Зиновьев, Каменев, Бухарин, Рыков, Томский, перечислил целый ряд.
I couldn't bear it. We were having lunch. I picked up a knife and threw it at him.
Я не выдержала. У меня в руках был...
Thank goodness I missed him, but that was what was happening at the time. Stalin was shooting them all.
К счастью, я не попала.
She broke with her first husband over this slur. Later, he was purged and killed. She fell in love with and married a second man who still shared her unquestioning adoration for Stalin, but he too was purged. Then, as the wife of an enemy of the people, Ella Shishcha was herself arrested and sentenced to prison in Siberia. She was sent with a party of other women crammed into goods wagons. With nothing but salt fish to eat, she developed a desperate thirst.
Вот я помню, как я слизывала, ведь мороз был сильный.
I remember when there was a hard frost.
Гайки, болты, которые...
Inside the wooden cattle truck, I used to lick the ice off the metal screws and bolts, fearing only that my tongue would stick.
Вот так мы
That's how we traveled,
ехали.
for about a month.
Ехали мы около месяца.
Though their husbands had been killed before they left Moscow, the women were convinced they were in the railway wagon just behind them. As the train went east, they sang a song to their men, hoping they'd hear.
Это мы, ваши жены, подруги, это мы нашу песню поем. Из Москвы по сибирской дороге вместе с вами этапом идем. Прочитали в бутырках нам приговор, дали каждой жене 8 лет и, вручивши конвою пакеты, повезли нас по 100 человек. Было тяжко в холодной теплушке, ели только мы рыбный кондер. У конвоя выпрашивали свечку, не теряя былой свой задор.
Mass shipments of prisoners continued for years. They filled thousands of camps in the remotest and most inhospitable parts of the Soviet Union. Prisoners became an essential part of the workforce, slave labor for the new mines and railways, being forced through regardless.
В лагере и на БАМ-лагере я был первый.
First I worked on the BAM railway,
На Колыме, когда я был.
then in Kolyma.
Самая главная опасность не умереть.
The
с
important
голоду.
thing was not to die of hunger.
Баланду тебе давали. Баланда это суп без всякой, ну там плавает.
They gave you
там
balanda,
кости
a
рыбьи,
soup with just a few fish
что-то
bones
вроде
and some oats floating
было
around.
там. Мы эту баланду выпивали через.
We drank from metal bowls. They gave us a ladle of balanda and a lump of bread.
Вот так вот выпивали его и пайку хлеба. Еле-еле нас заставлял холод работать еще, потому что если
We could hardly work for the cold.
не работали, то
If we didn't move or work, we would have frozen.
и когда человек хочет, ну, оправиться в забое, так он должен...
When someone wanted to relieve themselves, they had to take their mittens off. By the time they undid their trousers, their hands were frozen. As soon as they pulled it out, it froze. Many people had their parts amputated.
Оперированный. Никаких там уколов, никаких...
There were no injections, anything to reduce pain. They didn't even have proper scalpels.
Даже не было операционных скальпелей. У меня, например, на лагпункте на
When I was in the camp, they asked me to hold out my frostbitten foot, and with pliers, they just took chunks out. That was the treatment, the operation.
И все. Вот и все лечение, вся операция. И тот, кто первую
It was
зиму,
considered that if you survived the first winter,
тот уже
you'd get through your
считался, что он
sentence.
выдержит
Most
срок.
people didn't survive.
Большинство не выдерживало.
Stalin's henchmen tried to justify what was happening.
Мы можем прямо сказать, что НКВД своей разобщительной работой раскрытия шпионской организации не только спас много жизней, которым угрожала опасность от врагов, шпионов, диверсантов, разведчиков.
Applauding the message was the loyal construction worker Tatyana Fyodorova.
А то, что какие-то вот такие политические интриги, игры, которые были, если будут, к сожалению.
The fact is that unfortunately you always have political intrigues, machinations of this kind.
Не заслонило движение вперед никак.
It was a very hard time, but it didn't derail the movement forward in any way, because the country was growing at great speed. We're talking about a country of many millions. The whole population worked, sang songs. It doesn't mean that everything was extinguished, everything was lost.
Это не значит, что сразу все куда-то погасло и все пропало. Нет.
All right. Well, we can simply rationalize by just, singing songs. And everything's going to be fine. Any takeaways just from that little clip on how Stalin would deal with opposition, political opponents? I guess realistically, did we learn anything different? Were there any rhyme and reason and who he picked? All right, so they picked groups of people that they thought were spies and traitors. But I guess in reality, were they? In any country, you're going to have opponents. You have political opponents, and how you deal with them is going to vary. There definitely seemed to be, if we want to use a word, an arbitrary selection. And at sometimes where he thinks that, we need to make more examples, just jack up the quota a little bit here, put up the numbers a little bit more. And some of these individuals, they were people who were supporters of the cause from the beginning. And now they become victims of it. And if they live through it, of course, a lot of question marks that go along with it. If you were accused of being a Trotskyite or a Trotsky, that's pretty much off to Siberia go, or you're going to get exiled, or you're going to get executed. And Trotsky, in the power struggle, was Stalin's main opponent. And even if Trotsky had been exiled out of the Soviet Union, but they still viewed him as a threat. They eliminated the threat in 1940 because Trotsky's going to be assassinated. Does anyone know how Trotsky was assassinated? The means? It's kind of brutal. He was in exile in Mexico City, and the assassin used an ice pick. That's hardcore. So he died from his ice pick wounds. But Stalin ordered the assassination. Got to get rid of public enemy #1, Trotsky. Okay, so opposition. So both Hitler and Stalin dealt with their opponents through a variety of means, and they were very successful in suppressing the opposition in their countries. All right, with that, you should be working on completing the domestic and foreign policies activity for tomorrow. Are there any questions related to that? Anything that needs to get clarified? Chapter 2 in your textbook should be your main source. I suppose you could go out there and GTS some of it, but I would really use chapter 2 in your textbook as a key source here. All right. So at this point, I just do one more reminder here, or just recap a little bit. Friday, any missing work, you want to make sure you get that in. If you can't, please reach out. You'll have an assessment that will open up on Friday, close on Sunday, so you have a little bit of time there. This activity is due tomorrow, which is Thursday, and I also want you to make aware that Friday is an advisory day. So you want to make sure that you dial it in with your advisory teacher on Friday. All right. So with that, those at home, you know, continue. You can stay on the Google Meet and ask questions. Work on this assignment. Work in breakout rooms if you want to, or exit and have a great day. Those here, you know, let's continue to work on the activity.